Welcome to the next episode of Real Estate Forensics. Today, we're going to examine a distressed home that was brought to my attention in a small town in Central California. As you can see from the pic, this home is in pretty rough shape. The pics show that it's been abandoned and it needs quite a bit of work. But what caught my attention is the price tag. $139,000 means that it's, yes, it's a fixer-upper, but due to the high ARV in that area for a small town, there is potential for a good profit. So that's what initially brought me to this home and caused me to give it attention. Now, is it something that's worth it? Will it pass our scrutiny? Will it pass our forensic examination based on math? Well, let's find out in today's episode. First of all, let's take a look at this home. There's many factors to take into consideration when deciding whether to bid on something like this or not before we run the numbers. One thing that stood out to me is that this home is in an area that is commercially zoned. In other words, it has potential for more. An ADU or even in a small apartment building is possible to be constructed on it because there are no zoning issues. In fact, all around here you could see, in fact, right across the street, there's an apartment building. Right over here, there's a big apartment complex. Right here next door, there's an apartment. So there would be no problem duplicating something like that here, if it's possible. Now, is that something that we should consider? Well, it depends on our budget, depends what we're trying to do. But for me, I saw the possibility of at least an ADU. So that's what crept into my mind. A low price, a possibility of an ADU, and maybe I could get this deal done. Especially because homes around there had sold for around $290,000, giving me a pretty good after repair value. Even if I had to invest, say, $100,000 into regutting this guy. It's something that was under consideration, but rejected. Why? As you can see, I have my forensic analyzer up, and this is what's going to help us run the exact numbers to see if this is a deal that's worth it. So as you can see, I already have the numbers input for this home. Here's the address. This is the offer that I was considering just as a baseline, $130,000. I estimated an $80,000 rehab estimate. Now, this wasn't blind. I actually sent someone to go look at it, and I did a quick takeoff, though it wasn't detailed. It was just a quick takeoff. I know it might be more, but for the purpose of this, that's a decent number. Now, as you can see, I did a manual ARV override to not use AI to do that of $280,000. The reason is I know that homes have sold in that area for that price or more, similar homes. And there's another reason that we'll get to later. So what I did is I input these and I ran my analyzer. And here are the results. As you can see, the analyzer gave it a borderline verdict. What that means is it might work, but you gotta be careful. Why? Well, note the key factors that were pointed out by the analyzer. One, the structure is risky. Even though there's higher market demand, the rent comps, they're not completely 100% because they're AR read. So it might not be quite what we see here. Rehab scope, which is accurate, you pretty much need to gut the house out. You need to do a lot of work. Now, the plus is, it looks like the roof is in good shape and the foundation is in good shape. And there's things you could work with. And our DSCR number, if possible, if this worked out, is pretty good. So the possibility of refinancing and getting your money back is pretty good. Okay, so these are the basic numbers we found. But the caveat is right here, verify. And this is how the analyzer can protect you. If it's not a good deal, if it's not a sure A+ deal, it's going to signal it. What that means is that we need to do our due diligence and make sure we're getting ourselves into something where we don't get our money stuck in. So as our analyzer tool pointed out, this deal was possible, but it needed verification, needed eyes there. So what I did is I sent a local contact, which just happened to be my father, to go inspect the property. And he came back with a report that kind of sealed the deal for me. First of all, here's one thing that he did point out that I hadn't noticed. See that? New windows. Apparently, someone had been working on it. Now, we assume that it was probably the person that inherited the property that was working a little bit on it and might have ran out of money. But what my father did is he talked to some of the local neighbors, and it turns out that this was a flipper that came in to work on the home. And all of a sudden, he put it up for a price that was insanely low. What does that tell you? Automatic red flag, right? Something wrong, something we don't know about. And so that was the first clue that there might be some issue with this home. Now, there'll be others that we're going to point out. One has to do with the local comp. Now, let me show you right here one of the local comps. As you can see right here, this property right here that we see right here was one of the local comps that was used in calculating the ARV of this. Why was it used? Now, it was used because this home is a home that was on sale for $259,000, and it's a lot smaller, but it's nearby. Now, if this home sold for that, it justified the number. So what I did is I sent my dad to go look at it. And what he found was that this home was actually a lot worse than it seems. This home was in a lot that's a triangle with 5 feet clearance on each side. Basically, this home was not going to sell anytime soon. What it looked like to me was a local flipper got into it, rehabbed it, and it had been sitting on the market. As we found out, even though the listing said differently, it was on the market for about 100 days. This home is not going to sell. So what does that tell me? That maybe our after repair value wasn't quite correct on the home we found. So that's a big red flag. What else did we find on this home? Well, we found other issues. One has to do with something we could see in the analyzer as the calculated rent right here. Estimated rent $1,700 a month. Now, this number might seem legit for the area, and it is because the rents everywhere around have been stabilized for a while. But remember what I said about being commercial? Well, next door is an apartment building, and my father went to go talk to someone. And we found out that 2-bedroom apartments are renting for $1,000 a month. Now, they're much smaller. They're only 500 square feet. But remember, even though this is a house, we can't expect a big jump to be realistic. So most likely, the rent is going to be closer to the $1,400 a month range than the $1,700 that was calculated by AI and by the local comps. So right here, we see a few things that right away say this deal is probably not going to work. So what we do now is let's just verify. What we could do is run the new numbers in our analyzer and see once and for all, is this worth it or not? I think we all know the answer, but let the math give us a clear decision. Let's run it and see what happens. As you can see, we're back on our forensic analyzer, and I went ahead and input some new numbers to get a better base on the scope of this project. For example, I upped the rehab estimate to $100,000 because, as we know, and we found out somebody was already working on it. So there's probably an issue that we're not seeing. So let's just assume a full gut of this thing, rebuild. 100,000 is the better number. It's a safer number. The other factor we found out is that the rent that we were calculating was a little high. $1,700, while sustainable, maybe 2 blocks away, is not sustainable in that particular home. More likely, it's $1,400. So I went ahead and put that as a safe assumption too. Okay, now that we have the new numbers, let's go ahead and rerun the comp. Let's rerun the analyzer and let's see what the result will be. Okay, I went ahead and pre-ran it so it won't, because it takes about 30 seconds to do it. But what can we find out here? We found out that this property, this deal went from a maybe to a kill it here. It fails completely. Our property score is 30 out of 100. Weak. Something we shouldn't even have taken the time to look at. What changed? Well, what changed is this. $1,400 a month is not really a good number. The after repair value is $225,000 now. Why? Because that comp that we were using was something that was an illusion. It wasn't real. This comp is more closer to what it should have been from the beginning. Now, taking into all that account, that means that this was a no-go from the beginning. Now, what happened? Well, sometimes we let emotions get in our way instead of the numbers. What I saw in this property, and I was kind of trying to make it work, I saw that it was a home in a commercial area that could possibly become more. I saw the potential for maybe a duplex in the back or a fourplex in the back because it could easily be done. The homes all around it have the same thing. So I thought, well, if I scope this guy right away, if I take care of this guy, I could refi and then boom, boom, boom. But was that realistic? No. Had I gone for this, I would have got stuck in it like some poor guy probably got stuck in it before me. What does that tell us? What's the lesson here? Well, the lesson here is run the numbers and trust the numbers. That's why I designed the forensic analyzer. It uses AI for a quick assessment in the field. In this case, it saved me. It saved me from my own bad intuition. Now, there is a mode, like I said, that's more exact, and that becomes right before the deal where you use local comps, exact local comps, and not use the AI version. But the AI version helps us make a good informed decision, and that's what we're using here for this example. So once again, lesson learned. Trust the numbers, run analysis, trust the dissection of the property by number. Once again, thank you for coming, and this concludes this case for this home on 330 North L Street. It's a fail. It's a pass on the deal. If you're interested in me scoping out one of your properties, leave a message, and maybe that's something we could do in a future episode. Thank you for taking the time. Once again, subscribe, give a like if you want, and once again, thank you for taking the time to make it to the end of this video. This is Forensic Analyzer closing the case.